Hey guys, it's Fall. I'm here with a new episode of Scoped Up. Today we'll be looking at Overpass. This episode is going to sort of wrap up our early aggression, and what we're going to be doing now is we're going to be talking more mid to late round after this episode. But without getting too much more into that, we're going to start things off by looking at the CT side of Overpass. So the first thing we're going to be going over, guys, is I'm going to show you a few different ways you can peek CT side of Fountain. The next peek will be a very aggressive long A peek, and to finish things off, I'll show you guys how to peek long B. Now, when you want to peek Fountain, you want to make sure you have the best spawn, obviously. All sorts of utility can be helpful. I would advise almost always having a flash or a smoke when you go for this peek. So the first peek I'm going to be showing you guys is the peek on the ground. Now, this peek is more for just a very fast info play and a fallback. So by peeking mid on the ground, you just want to run in through bathroom, you come up and you just peek right here. And all you're trying to do is pick anybody going across the playground. When you hit this point, first off, you don't want to stay here too long because the team is going to be using a lot of utility flashes, nades. They could be rushing you on your left. The other thing, guys, is you do not want to over peek this angle. If you maybe peek too wide, you really start losing your advantage. The longer you sit here, the wider you peek. All of these things are working against you. So you want to peek here, you want to peek quickly, you want to look for your guy crossing. If you don't get it, you don't get it. So another variation of the fountain peek that you can do is my personal favorite, which is jumping on top of the party rail. Similar principle to the first peek on the ground. I feel like you have a little bit more safety in terms of like where you're positioned. I also feel like it's a little bit easier to shoot people from up here because a lot of people tend to jump across, which you having a little bit more elevation makes the shot easier to hit. But the same rules apply. The longer you sit here and the wider you peek this angle, you start giving yourself more disadvantages, so you get your kill and you fall. So the last variation of the fountain peek that we're going to be going over, guys, is going to involve needing a smoke. And if you want to incorporate a teammate, that's always a bonus, but you don't need one. Regardless, you'll still be able to probably get a pick with this as long as they're going towards A. Just like the other two peeks, you come in through bathroom, you just have your smoke out, and you're going to come in through here, and you're basically just throwing a smoke off of the wall above the trash can. Now, what this does is, first off, it creates this illusion that you could be pushed into this position here, which some people do like to play around, and they'll play above the smoke as a one-way. The other thing that this smoke does is allows you to sit back here. Now, why this is so powerful is because so many people come up to clear playground and think of this as an off angle because you're denying them so much information. They don't know if you're peeking above the smoke. They don't know if you maybe just went connector. You could be underneath. There are so many things that the T's now have to consider, and genuinely this is probably the last place they're going to expect you, which is just kind of an on and off angle. So if they cross towards long, you see them, they kill them. And also you have a very quick escape route into bathrooms. You just get out immediately. It's a really powerful peek that I personally really enjoy, and I feel like I don't even utilize enough. So this is a very, we'll say, a hyper aggressive play. I would advise you to have a teammate supporting you, either pushing fountain or being behind you when you go for this. A lot can go wrong, so make sure you're comfortable with this before you even attempt it. So with your front spawn, you're just gonna run along A, and I personally use one of these light posts as kind of like my gauge of where I should be peeking. So I just run all the way up and I come up to this light post. I peek to the right of it and I just peek right here. I'm looking for the other opper, and if I don't see him here, I'm going to immediately continue to aggress. And this is my own personal preference. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, you don't have to. However, holding here is not good. I would advise you to keep going. You want to push past this point, and if they're going to give all this space to you, you should take it. If you get to this point right around here, you've cut off the entire map for your team. They can only be in connector and they can only be towards B. So if they're going to give you this, take it. Now, this is a very aggressive pick, and if they start throwing flashes and you feel a heavy presence, you have two options. You either fight or you just get out immediately. This is a really strong play. It just requires a lot to go right, and a lot of things can go wrong. You just got to find your comfort zone. While going for the long A peek, guys, what your teammate can be doing is making a presence at fountain. just like that round where you threw the smoke, have your teammate do that for you when you aggress long. You know, your teammate could even maybe play the off angle while you aggress long, so that way when you get a kill and they try to rush you, he can peek and cover you and help you from this position as well. The other thing is, if they don't feel comfortable doing that, or you want your teammate behind you because they think they could potentially rush you, maybe have your teammate come to tree when you go for the early peek, or have your teammate come to rock looking head down so he doesn't get flashed. First things first, you never ever will beat the terrorist to the long B peak unless he has a bad spawn. I like to peek long B with a really good spawn when I know that it could potentially be an eco and I could shut down the long B pipe for my teammates. If you have an op, you get the first pick, fall back to pillar, it can be really strong. So make sure you obviously have the best spawn. Now make sure if you're ever going towards long, you go through heaven and you jump into pit. When you get to this point with your op, if you think they are opping it that round, you don't have to go right for this peak. You could even come to pillar if you think they're rushing it right away. And what you can do for a delayed long peak is you come to this wall here and you get lined up with this wooden piece. And then I use this little stain and I just aim slightly above it and on the edge of the wood piece. And what this flash does is it flashes the entire tunnel without the other player being able to see it coming. There's a lot of different things you can do. However, the reason why the long B peak is still powerful is with a good spawn, and if the other team doesn't have an op, just like when you push early at A, you can cut off an entire part of the map for your team early into the round and give your team a lot of space. Kind of similar to cobblestone, where we talked about how the CTs are much more the aggressors with the op. It's kind of the same for overpass, but there are still some things, and I'll show you one set play that I really like doing towards short A. I'll show you a way you can hold the long B peak, and I'll also be showing you a cool little trick that you can be using to hold and spot connector aggression. So spawn doesn't matter obviously because it's more of a mid-round thing that happens. Essentially, after you're done holding for long A or like just any sort of A aggression, you've identified that this team really isn't pushing into you and you have some freedom to move up fountain. What you'll need is usually a couple flashes, you know, in case they do early aggress, and you just throw one over towards fountain stairs. The second one you'll be using for your last peek. So I like to smoke off the front bathroom and then flash over the hedge. By smoking off the front bathroom, it's going to move any opper that is posted on divider, either watching party stairs or maybe sitting in the bathroom watching fountain stairs. It is very standard that many oppers will just hold here because it is pretty safe. So what you're going to do is you're going to smoke the front bathroom, and then as that opper is repositioning, you're going to throw an underhand a flash over the hedge, and then you're going to just peek right here. Now the great thing about this is it's masked by the fact that a lot of people default this way. It's not just something that only oppers do. It gets a lot of kills because it's just kind of hard to identify what is happening. If you identify that the enemy team is sending their opper along B a lot, or just aggressing long B and they're not smoking it off, they're not mauling it, they're just being really stingy, you know, going to long B at the start of the round is extremely powerful and can be very useful for your team. It doesn't really matter too much to spawn because most of the time your spawn will beat the CTs, and this is the position that you want to hold. Now, this is a little scary being here because if somebody does push short B and you're solo, you know, you're very exposed, and it's also a little scary because if somebody has a very good pop flash from sight, you still can get blind from over top and you won't be able to see it. However, the flash that we went over on CT side will not blind you if they are already this wide on this position. And also, you holding this, and if they're not smoking this is a great time to maybe tell your teammates to walk explode long B. That's really powerful if a team is not using utility or putting and posting anybody on it, and not having somebody all the way to the right of monster is very helpful for your teammates. It gives them a lot of wiggle room when they come out of monster. This is something where when your teammates are basically giving you the information that, hey, an opper or a rifler is aggressing connector a lot, they're not smoking it, they're just taking fights, you know, this is a great way to punish that. Once again, spawn doesn't really matter. You jump down the ladder, and obviously, just so you know, the quickest way is always you just fall, and you fall onto the wooden plank. And then what you do is actually jump on this wooden plank, and then you get behind the ladder. They can't see you. You have all sorts of information. Even if you don't get a kill here, a lot of people, what they'll end up doing, say you don't throw any utility, and they don't throw any utility, and they think they can just walk through and try to push, you'll see them walk by your scope, and what you can do is then just stay either scoped in, or you can just wait until they push in, and you can get them right here on an off angle. However, do not go here every single round, and we've talked about it before. You have a very powerful weapon. You need to get it active, and you need to move it around the map to make space for your team. Alright guys, that wraps up this episode of Scoped Up on Overpass, and it's also going to wrap up the early round aggression type stuff on these maps that are in the active pool right now. Make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and last but not least, make sure you leave a comment below on what map you guys would like to see me cover next in terms of the mid-round aggression and some positions that you can hold in the middle of the round. Take it easy, and I will see you guys in the next episode of Scoped Up. Later.